Everybody loves to talk nowadays as a UFC fan about resumes, man. It feels like every other week somebody has to have a new divisional GOAT. You gotta relax with that, but at the end of the day, today we're gonna be talking just about the most underrated resumes, in my personal opinion, in the UFC right now for current fighters on the roster. And this could be anywhere from people who are, in the top 10 or 15 of GOAT status, or just people that are maybe just in the top 15 in general of their divisions, you know what I mean? So in that regard, it does kind of stretch out like the gum fruit on the spectrum, you know what I'm saying? So just getting into it, in my opinion, the most underrated resumes in the UFC right now. Jiri Prochazka, I gotta start off with this because this is a guy who, you look at it, only like 7 fights in the UFC. He's lost 2 of them. You think, all right, it can't be that much, right? But he is, man. He is. He's one of these people that's just simply built different. Not only in terms of just his fucking character or who he is as a goddamn weirdo of a person, a weirdo who you really respect and admire and just want to add him to the dream rotation. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, in terms of his resume and his fighting skill set, man, like I'm saying, only a little bit of fights in the UFC in the grand scheme of things, but every win he's had is meaningful. Every fight he's had is meaningful. He's like a Justin Gaethje situation where it's like one fight in the UFC and they're immediately throwing him to the wolves. I mean, people forget, man, but Jiri Prochazka, the 2 losses he's had is to Alex Pereira, who, I mean, let's be honest, if he beat Big Ank, he would have been like on Daniel Cormier level of just GOAT status, and especially for that division. So Jiri Prochazka, for him to only lose to him, say what you want about the defense in the striking, say what you want about the head movement, say what you want about all of them, about how the dude is like a Rock Lee just punching a tree in the woods like 1,000 goddamn times before he shows up to a fight. The dude is crazy, but the wins over these former champions like Teixeira and Jamal Hill, say what you want, I know they're not like the craziest champions in the grand scheme, but they're great wins. The same can be said with Reyes and Ozdemir and Alexander Rakic. I mean, and Jesus, these are guys who it's like, some of them aren't even necessarily the most exciting fighters, but Prochazka brings that out of them, man. If he's not the one that's deliberately giving a brutal knockout, he's the one receiving it, or just having a war of a scrap. Beating Jamal Hill, Teixeira, Reyes, Ozdemir, and Rakic, they're a solid 5 wins to have. And Prochazka's a guy who he's in the middle of his prime, especially for, the upper weight classes standards. They can kind of go a bit closer to 40 or past it. So Prochazka's going to be around for a while. He's going to, I think it's a really good chance of beating Oldberg, and just like, I feel like he's only going to lose to these like very, very elite guys. If anything, I could even see him like reclaiming the belt one day if it's not for the Big Anks or Pereiras, you know what I mean? So Prochazka got to put respect in the resume, and I think it's just going to add up, you know what I mean? And a win over Oldberg is just going to add to it, Moving on, up next, man, to Sean Strickland. Now, this is a guy who it's like, listen, Prochazka, I have a personal investment in. Like, I'm a fan of the guy. I love seeing his fighting style. I love to do it outside the cage. Strickland, I can kind of say the opposite with, to be honest with you. Like, listen, the Strickland title run, here's the fucking thing, you guys. I'm just going to go to war for you people. I'm going to bleed. I'm going to do it for you fucking guys. Like, Strickland, I liked the little title run he had. He had that weird kind of like babyface heel run. It was a thing that we all just had to deal with in this timeline. It is what it is. But in terms of the dude's resume, I mean, he has so many fights, and with that comes so many wins. You know what I mean? The dude is one of the most experienced guys in the UFC. Like, he is a vet of the game, a former champion, and it's crazy to say. I know everyone likes to just shit, especially nowadays, after the 50-45 that he received from DDP, about how he's a pitter-patter decision fest and, one of the weakest champions in history, and that may be true, but at the end of the day, when you look at the guys he did beat, even with the pitter-patter style, even with just the stiff, crisp boxing, even with him barely ever really shooting takedowns, here and there, you know what I mean? But in the grand scheme of things, Sean Strickland, regardless, still has fantastic cardio and boxing, and it goes to show. And takedown defense in general, man. Like, look at the guys like Imavov, who is just like the literal #1 contender right now, right up there with Chimaev, you know what I mean? Strickland beat him on 2 weeks' notice. He went to a really close fight against Jared Cannonier. A lot of people thought that he won the fight, even though they gave it to Cannonier in the scorecards or whatever. And he comes back literally 2 weeks later to beat Imavov, who now is the #1 contender. It's crazy. The longevity of the wins that he's getting. It really does last, man. Like the win over Adesanya, the win over Magomedov, he just entered the rankings. He's on a win streak right now. Wins over Brendan Allen, wins over Jack Hermanson, wins over Nasruddin Imavov. And you gotta look at like the guys he's losing to, especially in the latter end of his career. It's like even in the early days, like he's losing to like Kamaru Usman on the come up, and now he's losing to like Pereira, Cannonier by split decision. He gave DDP a really close fight. I mean, Strickland, say whatever you want about his skill set, but he is sadly the king of split decisions. But I don't want to take that away from how good he is as a fighter or how solid the resume is. I'm not saying Strickland's a top 5 middleweight, but man, he's relatively up there, close to it. You know what I mean? If you really fucking look at things, I'm not saying wins over Paulo Costa and Uriah Hall far the most impressive things in the world, but it all adds up. Strickland really is only losing to the very, very elite guys. Now, he does still have a couple years left in the UFC. We're going to see how that ages. Maybe he'll get a couple more losses with it. We'll fucking see it. But however I feel about him outside of the cage, I can't deny that people really disrespect the resume and like they focus solely on these losses, like especially to the recent DDP one, you know. Truly an example of people forget, man, you know. But moving on up next, man, to Magomed Ankalaev. And I know it's weird to say that a champion can have like an underrated resume because, you know, they're literally the peak of the division. They're one of the best now. But at the end of the day, I feel like that could be said with Big Ank, man. Like, oh, this is his best win was Johnny Walker. His best win was Johnny Walker. He doesn't deserve anything. But like, really, when you're looking at a man, especially for a division that's, can I be honest, I mean, as shallow as light heavyweight, especially right now and in the past few years, like getting these wins over these ranked guys like Smith, Walker, Rakic, and then beating a champion like Pereira, like it does say something, man. I mean, a win over Ozdemir as well, Thiago Santos, Nikita Krylov, Ion Cutelaba, man. Like, it's a solid resume with a lot of recognizable names. And at the end of the day, just his record in general, regardless of UFC record, his overall record, the only loss he has is to the big, the almighty. I mean, Jesus Christ, my fucking floor and walls are shaking just saying his name, but Paul Craig, you know what I'm saying? So, and it was a sneaky last few seconds of the fight submission. So, Magomed Ankalaev, say whatever you want. I think he's underratedly just entertaining. I think that the dude is, people forget, man, I gotta stop saying that in this video, but people forget that the dude is literally primarily a striker. He knows how to bring it. Some of his fights, you could argue literally half of his fights are duds of decisions, a bit boring, and I can understand that, but in terms of the skill set, man, like he's one of the most well-rounded fighters there is, pound for pound in the UFC. He can bring it on the feet with his striking, solid pop behind his shots, solid finishing ability, and just with a solid foundation of just that big, mighty Dagestani wrestling that he has as well. Like, you know, he wasn't able to take down Pereira, but I think that goes to show how much Pereira's defense has improved, you know what I mean? So, Ankalaev, this is a guy who you didn't really think he was going to be, and he's literally like 31 or 32 or something like that. So it's like, you didn't really think he was going to be one of those guys where a few more wins and he could literally be right up there surpassing Daniel Cormier. But, you know, and as someone who, that kind of hurts the heart because I'm a huge Cormier fan and I'm not crazy about Big Ank, but it is what it is, man. Like, I can't deny that people need to respect the resume he's got here. He's really only a few wins away from doing some really serious shit and even getting up there with the GOAT rankings, you know what I mean? So moving on up next now, man, I had to include one of the Unks. I had to include one of the Grunkles here. I had to put Rob Font. Now listen, somebody to represent the cookout, you know what I mean? And this cookout is rated E for everybody. So Rob Font, man, I'm not saying he's going out there and beating like a bunch of the top 5, even really like a bunch of the top 10 guys in the grand scheme of things, but it's like the wins he's getting, and especially like this random comeback he's had right now, you know, and I believe he just switched camps recently in his past couple fights. It's going to show. With the prospects he's just being like Kyler Phillips and G Matsumoto, I'm not saying that's like, you know, people are going to look back and be like, oh my God, the win over Kyler Phillips. But like, I think that it might, man. He's only losing to guys, especially lately, like Aldo, Cheeto Vera, Corey Sandhagen, Davison Figueiredo. Like, these are some of the best bantamweights there are, you know what I mean? Beating the prospects I mentioned, plus one in like Adrian Yanez. That was a sick, nasty fucking win. Sick for the parlays. And then even guys like Sergio Pettis, Ricky Simone, he just got a recent fucking win. He looked badass in that one. I sound like Dana White. He's a badass kid, man. But Marlon Moraes, Cody Garbrandt, you know what I mean? Like, there's these wins that, you know, they don't hit the hardest. They're not like these top 5 names, but when they keep adding up, when you're really looking at the guys that Rob Font has been losing to, especially lately, like, Jesus, you forget that the dude is like middle-aged, man, because he's piecing guys up, you know what I mean? So, not the craziest resume in the world. It's nothing flashy, but I think that there's longevity there, and it's someone that's going to continue to just age well, you know what I mean? He's one of the glorified gatekeepers, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, he's just an S-tier gatekeeper, I guess is how I should word it, you know what I mean? Enough to hang with the best of them, you know, and give a lot of these top guys a tough test, but not really enough to break that upper echelon, you know? So moving on up next, man, all due respect to Robbie Font, moving on up next to Brandon Royval for the flyweights here, man. 17-7 record, and a guy who's lost already like 2 or 3 times to the champ. You look at that, and some people would scoff at that, but honestly, Royval has an underrated resume, in my opinion. And I know it gets all fucking tricky at flyweight because, you know, sometimes things just don't make sense down there. Like, Steve Erceg did give Pantoja an extremely close fight, and look at what's happened since that fight alone, you know what I mean? Let alone the rest of the division. Like, flyweight, it's kind of bizarre how things just kind of randomly work sometimes, the hierarchy of everything. But Brandon Royval really has solidified himself as one of these like Max Holloway, Kobe Covington, Robert Whittaker situations where they're like the interim invisible champion. Like, they have that silver belt around them. Like, they're shutting every contender down before they get to the champion, but they're only losing to the champion. You could even argue like Jiri Prochazka is right up there. We have to see how he does against Big Ank if that happens. You know, if he loses to Big Ank though, I mean, he's right there with this guy, you know? Royval is only losing, he's lost once to Moreno in the UFC and twice to Pantoja. Other than that, man, he's beaten everybody else. He had a great win, a very close competitive fight. Brandon Royval whooping the fuck out of Tetsuro Taira, who's an amazing prospect. I think he's going to have a lot of longevity and stick around. He's got good grappling, man, just needs to improve the striking a bit. But even then, Royval, I said he lost to Moreno. He got that win back last year, man, and he looked good while doing it. Split decision, so say what you want about it, but like, dude had crazy volume. He even mixed it up on the ground a little bit. Like, Royval looked good. He also beat Kai Kara France. I rate that win pretty solidly, you know what I mean? But even these like kind of mid-ranked wins like Matt Schnell, Nikolai, Tim Elliott, shit like that, they're not going to go crazy. But at the end of the day, when you're only losing to like the number one ranked guy, one of the best flyweights of all time, you know, Brandon Moreno, and then you're losing to Pantoja twice, I don't think that says too much damage, man. I think Royval is going to continue. You know, he's relatively young too. He's going to stick around. I think he's going to keep piecing up guys. I don't think he's going to win the belt necessarily, you know. I don't even know if he's necessarily going to get past Cop, but if he does, I mean, Jesus, it's not like the fight against Pantoja is really going to get me excited, but you can't deny he's earned it at that point, beating Moreno, Taira, and eventually Cop by then. You know what I mean? So all due respect to Royval here. And the dude is decently active as well, you know what I mean? Especially in the past couple of years. So moving on up next here to Alexander Volkov, man. I had to include one of the big boys, even though the division is pretty much as fucked as it gets. Volkov, man, Jesus, he's like Anthony Smith gone right. You know what I mean? I mean, he has like 50 plus pro fights, so much experience, very kind of on and off of win streaks, but really only very few losses, man. It's hard even to just finish him. I believe he's only been finished twice in the UFC, once to Aspinall and once to Derek Lewis, and then only lost in general 4 times, the other 2 being Agan and Blade. So, you know, I rate those losses, you know, pretty solid. He beat Gan, in my opinion. I had him winning that fight. Would have been my goddamn underdog pick of the year as well. The UFC fucked me on that one, but let alone they fucked up Volkov bad, because a win over Gan would have made that win streak just crisp enough to really earn a title shot. You know, even though he lost to Aspinall, you couldn't have even denied him at that point. And you know what? It's a shame because he looked great. We saw so many improvements that he made just all around in every regard, on the feet and on the ground, with the cardio, with the right fight IQ as well. And for him to lose that way, it's a shame, man. But I'm not going to deny just how good Volkov is in terms of the skill set. He's well-rounded as fuck, especially for heavyweight standards. I know he got submitted in the first round by Aspinall, but I think that goes to show how good and dangerous and menacing, Jesus Christ, the finishing ability of Aspinall is, you know, because Volkov's recent win streak, you know what I mean, piecing the fuck out of Pavlovich in a very, like, safe but really, like, secure decision, man. Like, it was impressive to do that, especially right after Aspinall knocked him out. Beating Rosenstruck, beating Romavov, beating Tybura, beating Overeem, a sick knockout over Fabricio Verdum as well, and of course his best win, Greg motherfucking Hardy. You know what I mean? So Volkov, so much experience in the UFC. I know he lost the first time to Gan, but at the end of the day, man, he did win that second time. It would have really just moved up his resume to another level, but at the end of the day, it's still good enough regardless. It's very underrated. I know that, you know, there's talks about him facing Jailton Almeida in the summer. I think that's kind of a done, dirty fight to him. Could have done a little better, but what the fuck ever. I know how Dana White loves respecting his legends, you know what I mean? So fuck it, man. Volkov, I think regardless, has a good chance of beating Almeida, who I rate pretty solidly, man. I think Almeida is going to be really dangerous for a lot of guys at heavyweight, especially, Jesus Christ, it's heavyweight, you know what I mean? Good grappling in the heavyweight division is like a round wheel in the Flintstones, you know what I'm fucking saying? So, moving on up next, now, man, to Mateusz Gamrot. Now, I'm not saying I'm like a huge Gamrot fan here or anything like that. I know that he's kind of on and off. Like, one fight he's having a really, you know, dud of a decision, and the other fight he's putting on a fucking war, like against Saryukin or Hooker, so you don't really know which Gamrot you're gonna get, and say whatever you want about the decision merchant and shit like that, but the dude has an underrated resume. In my opinion, dude, listen, as a fan of Hooker and as a fan of the game, listen, and in the story of Hooker making it back to the top 5, and just being a huge underdog, I wanted to see him beat Gamrot, but I'm gonna be honest, I had Gamrot winning that fight 2-1. It was very close. I understood why they gave it to Hooker, you know what I mean? You could argue he landed the more damaging shots, and his takedown defense was looking good for the most part, but in general, I did, in retrospect, have it 2-1 for Gamrot, you know what I mean? I could see the fight going either way. I get why they gave it to Hooker, but you know, that's a really close fight against Dan Hooker, and then he had the wins over RDA. It was a dud, but whatever, and an old RDA, but fuck it, you know what I mean? Another one. Rafael Fiziev, Jalen Turner, Armin Saryukin, very close fight, but at the end of the day, he still ended up getting the win. Jeremy Stevens, Diego Ferreira, like, these are solid wins, and in the earlier end of his career, like, he was getting a bunch of bonuses and getting a solid amount of finishes, but, you know, I know there's a bit of asterisks, like I said, like a close fight against Saryukin, or it's like the injury win over Fiziev, but at the end of the day, like, I think that more respect does need to be be put on Gamrot's resume as a whole. I know he has a fight with Ludovic Klein coming up, which is like a good fight to look forward to, but very random matchmaking. But I guess that, you know, Klein's getting a shot in the top 7. Fuck it. A lot of hardcores really wanted to see that, so there you go. You know what I mean? It's goddamn Christmas for y'all. And then Mateusz Gamrot was just wanting to take on anybody, so I respect it. I think a win over Klein will just be that nice little bit of depth to the resume. Not the craziest, especially because Klein's unranked for now, but you know what I mean. I think it's a win that's going to age well with time, if he does get past him, all things considered. So Gamrot, I think not the craziest, most exciting fighter to tune into, but the resume deserves a little bit more respect. You know what I'm saying? Moving on up next, man, to Israel Adesanya. Now, this is kind of a weird one here because it's like, this is a guy who's the second greatest middleweight of all time. So it's like, oh, how can it be underrated? But like I said at the top of the video, like, I'm going to include guys who are really kind of up there with GOAT status level shit in the top 20 in general. And you could argue Adesanya is a top 15, top 20, top 30, whatever the hell on the GOAT list. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's so easy nowadays, especially with, you know, he's lost like 4 of his last 5. It's so easy to be like, Adesanya was always washed. Pereira's above him all the time. Like, all of his wins were decision fest and there was like nothing. He just pitter-pattered his way to a great title reign. It's like, you might be true in some regards. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the fights were just pretty boring decisions. Some of these wins are random rematches, like Marvin Vittoria's a title defense, shit like that. Like, you kind of question that, you know? But when you look at the grand scheme of things, listen, I'm not crazy about Adesanya, but it's like people talk about this guy like he's just completely shit, like the legacy meant nothing. Like, I don't know, man. These wins that Adesanya is getting, like Costa, Marvin Vittori, very boring fight over Yoel Romero. I'm not rating him crazy, but in general, the longevity that Adesanya had, the consistency he had, the dude was very skilled on the feet. I don't think he was like the greatest striker the UFC's ever seen or even had at the time, but he was a top 10 for sure, you know what I mean? He had great fight IQ, had a solid team behind him. For the fans, it was very unfortunate half the time, but in terms of the title reign, in terms of the legacy he had, like, I can't just shit on it and disregard it in general, just looking back on things, you know what I mean? It wasn't the most fun a lot of the time, but at the end of the day, there were glimmers and there were hopes, and just the names that he was beating, and especially the wins over like Whitaker and Alex Pereira, like, I think they're really gonna last, man, you know what I mean? Or really should last. In my personal opinion, I don't have Adesanya like my top 10, maybe even top 15, but top 20 for sure. Like, he'll be in there. But at the end of the day, with how much he fought, with how active he was, and how elite, you know, elite, you gotta consider everything I'm saying here, but the competition that he was facing, I would say all in all, it's an underrated resume, man, you know what I mean? And that is gonna be it here, man. I almost included Alexandre Pantoja here, but I feel like everybody is saying to the point he's so underrated, where it's just like, I feel like he's kind of properly rated at this point. Like, we all are kind of realizing or know how good Alexandre Pantoja, you know, his skill set is and his resume is. I mean, Jesus Christ, he is whooping everybody in the goddamn flyweight division, regardless of finishes or really close fights or whatever the hell. So I almost put Pantoja on here, so shout out him. But that's gonna be it here, man, for some of the resumes that just I think about sometimes and I'm like, you know what, man, like, people I think should put a little bit more respect on some of these guys and the wins they have. So thank you guys so very much for making this far in the video. Appreciate y'all a lot. All the smoke here. If you could help me get to 1,000 subscribers, I'd really appreciate it. But regardless, thanks so much for making this far in the video. All the smoke. Appreciate y'all a lot. Enjoy the fights this weekend, boys, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one.